There's nothing quite like a band lineup change to bring out the drama. For fans, it's up there with a divorce announcement from your favorite Hollywood couple. Heartbreaking, bitter, and invariably full of speculation. What will happen to the sound? Fans cry. They're finished, the naysayers chant from the online pulpit of doom. And yet sometimes, a replacement doesn't just plug the gap, they redefine what the band can be. The truth is, music history is littered with stories of second acts that outperformed the originals. It's no easy feat to step into an established band, particularly one already beloved by legions of fans, but some musicians have done it with such aplomb that the band isn't merely saved, it's reborn. Here are 5 stories of replacement band members who turned crises into creative renaissances, complete with the hit, the drama, and of course the occasional hotel room trashed along the way. Stepping into the shoes of Peter Gabriel in 1975 might seem like a job description with "impossible" written in bold, but Phil Collins treated it with the casualness of someone filling in for a pub quiz teammate. "I thought I'd give it a go," Collins famously said of his first gig as Genesis frontman.
But suddenly, I became the singer, and but I never thought that the singer would leave. People said I sounded like Pete. Well, the only reason I could think of was the melodies were written melodies, so you sang the melody. Some people would think that was the melody that Peter had made up, but these were the melodies that were written with the composition of the thing, so therefore I was singing the same melody. That would have sounded somewhat like Peter. Our range may have sounded something similar. And also my voice had been on all the records. I'd been the backing vocals on The Lamb. I'd done duets. I'd done my own individual vocals. My voice was a familiar thing. So I think that's why people thought that we sounded alike.
If it didn't work, well, I was still the drummer, wasn't I? As it turned out, he wasn't just giving it a go, he was transforming Genesis. Gabriel's departure left Genesis at a crossroads. Known for their high-concept albums and live performances that saw Gabriel donning everything from fox heads to floral dresses, his absence could have been the end. Instead, Collins led the band into a new era. Their sound became leaner and more accessible, a shift that was met with skepticism from some early fans, but was undeniably effective. Phil just had this way of connecting with people, guitarist Mike Rutherford recalled in an interview. Peter had mystery, but Phil had warmth. Albums like A Trick of the Tail and Duke laid the groundwork.
Part of the life in the city of gold, he'd left and let nobody know.
But it was Invisible Touch that cemented Collins' reign. The title track became a global anthem, and even the critics, who'd initially dismissed Genesis' new sound, had to concede that it worked.
And it took me years, absolutely years, to take the microphone off the stand. That became my drum kit. That became my security blanket between me and the audience.
As Collins once quipped, we went from playing to a few thousand proggers in theatres to selling out stadiums. I'd call that progress. If Phil Collins casually wandered into greatness, Mick Taylor came into the Rolling Stones like a man on a mission. Replacing Brian Jones was no small feat. Jones had co-founded the band and was, for many, its creative spark. But by 1969, his personal struggles were overshadowing his contributions.
Well, how did you fit into the Stones? How did you find you fitted in?
Well, I always thought of it as an extension of what I was doing with John Mayall, really. John Mayall's band is basically a blues band, and the Rolling Stones started off as a blues band. It wasn't until they started writing their own material that they evolved into something else,
Mick came in when we were a mess, Keith Richards admitted in his autobiography. He didn't just play guitar, he gave us focus.
Mick Taylor opened up some beautiful possibilities, and especially in recording, because I would just lay down 3 or 4 different rhythm guitars Mick was very much a solo player, incredible melodic sensitivity about his playing.
Taylor's arrival marked a shift in the Stones' sound. His fluid, blues-infused playing added a sophistication that had been missing. Can't You Hear Me Knocking, with its extended instrumental outro, is practically a showcase for Taylor's virtuosity. He could do things with a guitar that just made you stop and stare, Charlie Watts once said. It was like he'd taken us into another league. While his time with the band was relatively short, just 5 years, it was undeniably impactful. Albums like Sticky Fingers and Exile on Main Street are widely regarded as the Stones' best work, and much of that is down to Taylor. His departure in 1974 left a void that, some argue, the band never quite filled again. Replacing an iconic frontman is never easy, but stepping into the void left by a creative enigma like Syd Barrett is a different challenge altogether. By 1968, Barrett's erratic behavior had begun to derail Pink Floyd, forcing the band to make a heartbreaking decision to continue without him. Then came David Gilmour, who had initially joined to support Barrett on guitar, but soon found himself taking on a far more significant role. "We were devastated," Gilmour recalled in Rolling Stone. "Syd was our friend, and he was the heart of the band in those early days. But the music had to go on. And go on it did, into territory that would redefine progressive rock forever." Gilmour's lush, melodic guitar work and smooth, understated vocals became the bedrock of Pink Floyd's sound as they evolved from their psychedelic beginnings to create era-defining masterpieces like Dark Side of the Moon and Wish You Were Here.
You shone like the sun. Shine on, you crazy diamond.
What Gilmour brought was not just technical expertise, although his soaring solos on tracks like Comfortably Numb
A distant ship's smoke on the horizon.
are often held up as the pinnacle of rock guitar, but also a new focus for the band. With David, it wasn't about replacing Syd, drummer Nick Mason said in an interview. It was about finding a new direction. His sound gave us the space to do that.
Syd's was definitely sort of more in the blues department, I would say, than my taste. But it didn't. You're not very purist about these things at that age. You're just excited by it all and learning new little tricks.
Absolutely.
I Syd in his early days in bands and in the early days of Pink Floyd used to do great versions of Bo Diddley things.
Gilmour's tenure also saw Pink Floyd tackling themes of alienation, mental health, and the human condition with an emotional resonance that continues to captivate audiences. "I wasn't trying to be Syd," Gilmour once said. "I was trying to help us become the band we were meant to be." And it's fair to say, he might just have succeeded.
And then it would go through, I mean, I was very pleased with the music, it was good, and I was not in any way ashamed of it, but...
Ian Gillan's arrival in Deep Purple in 1969 was the musical equivalent of strapping a jet engine to a family saloon. The band had already been experimenting with heavier sounds, but Gillan's voice gave them the firepower they needed to become true pioneers of hard rock. Ian could hit notes we didn't even know existed, guitarist Ritchie Blackmore said in a rare moment of praise. Gillan's impact was immediate. His operatic range and raw energy turned tracks like Child in Time into epics, while his screams on Highway Star became the stuff of legend. "It was like listening to a hurricane," drummer Ian Pace recalled. "You couldn't ignore it, even if you wanted to." The albums Gillan recorded with Deep Purple, In Rock, Machine Head, and Who Do We Think We Are now considered classics. And of course there's Smoke on the Water, a track so iconic it's practically a rite of passage for every guitarist. "I think we knew we'd made something special," Gillan said of the song. "We just didn't realize it would still be going all these years later." Few stories in rock history feel as tailor-made for Hollywood as Steve Perry's rise to prominence with Journey. By the late 1970s, Journey had built a solid reputation as a technically skilled rock band, but they lacked a breakout star. Enter Perry, whose voice could move effortlessly between soulful ballads and arena-filling anthems. The moment he opened his mouth to sing, the band's trajectory shifted permanently. "It was like he was born for this," guitarist Neil Schon said. "The first time we heard him, we just knew." Perry's debut album with Journey Infinity set the tone for the band's newfound success, with tracks like Lights and Wheel in the Sky, showcasing his rich, emotive vocals. But it was Escape in 1981 that cemented Journey as one of the biggest bands of the decade, thanks to hits like Don't Stop Believin' and Open Arms. Perry didn't just sing, he embodied every note. His theatrical, almost operatic delivery turned songs into stories, inviting listeners to not just hear the music, but to feel it. "He made us believe in the music we were playing," Schon said. "Suddenly we weren't just a rock band, we were something bigger."
We made some timeless music that nobody can deny, and he was one of the greatest vocalists of all time, so.
Perry's ability to connect emotionally with audiences made him a standout figure in an era defined by excess and theatrics. And while Journey's original singer, Gregg Rolie, had a certain charm, Perry's arrival turned the band into chart-topping giants. As Perry once put it, "I didn't want to just sing, I wanted people to feel like I was singing directly to them. That's what makes music unforgettable." These stories aren't just about great musicians, they're about great moments. Each of these replacements stepped into a band at a critical juncture and transformed not just the music, but the very identity of the group. They remind us that change, however daunting, can lead to brilliance. And for that, we owe them more than just applause. We owe them our eternal gratitude.